Hello, my name is Joe Lewis. I want to welcome you to this two-tape series on what we call target practice and bag work. Why is target practice, bag work important? The main thing is you're always working in relationship to an external target, just the same way you are in a realistic altercation in the street, or if you're working out or training in a gym, sparring or fighting. Now I want to talk a little bit about the difference between this concept street fighting and training in the ring per se. Keep in mind, I personally don't like the concept street fighting. To me, people who fight in the street are people who go after mug old ladies for their purses, or they go out and they're mugging drunks. And to me, those are hoodlums. So I want to get away from this concept street fighting. We're going to be doing what we call realistic drills or realistic combat for fighting styles or for fighting purposes. Now, whether you consider yourself a street fighter, a karateka, a karateist, a kickboxer, or a boxing, all of these drills, all of this information, the principles I'm going to be showing you on this tape will work for you regardless of your context. I'm not here to change anyone's style. I've got about 29 years ring experience, considering the 19 years I actually fought in the ring, and the last 10 years making it a total of 29 years ring experience. I'm a United States Amateur Boxing Federation coach, and about 7 of my sparring partners have become world champions either in boxing or kickboxing. I want to try to extend to you some of the information which I learned from my other training partners as well as the coaches that I've had over the years. Now, to start off with, I want you to understand some of the principles that we're going to be getting into. Before you actually start hitting a target, whether it be a double-end bag, a heavy bag, a speed bag, focus pads, or the tie pads. These are some of the pads we're going to be working with today. It's important for you to understand, first of all, how to position yourself, whether you're fighting as a kickboxer, boxer, fighting some kind of realistic context out there in a street altercation. Your stance is important. The stronger your stance, of course, the easier it is for you to squeeze your trigger, set your opponent up, bridge the gap between you and your opponent. In other words, execute your punches and kicks with good accuracy, good speed, as well as good power. Now, so the first thing we're going to be working on is showing you how to correctly execute the mechanics of these techniques. Keep in mind now, as you begin to work in relationship to a target, you must first find your range. The type of opponent in front of you determines your range. You're not going to fight a real tall person the same way you fight somebody really small. The range is going to be different. You're not going to fight somebody big and strong that's very tough the same way you're going to fight somebody that's small, not quite so strong. You're not going to fight a person who's a good kicker the same way you would fight a good puncher. Someone who's a quick lead-off fighter. Someone that's real trigger happy, likes to get in your face right off the bat. You're not going to fight that person the same way you would somebody like sit back in a foxhole, play kind of a waiting game, let you fire first. So keep in mind, the range between you and your opponent, okay, is dictated by one thing. And that's the type of opponent in front of you. Once you understand the range and you're able to find that distance or find that range, the second thing we'll work on will be timing, how you set up your timing. Thirdly, the type of timing that you use between you and your target, you and your opponent, will dictate the type of footwork that you use. And then, of course, the last thing we work on is what we call rhythm. Rhythm is always predetermined by the footwork that you're using. Now, keep in mind, what we're doing here is I'm trying to create what I call a sense of purpose. All good fighters, all good champions, all good trainers work for this key point here, sense of purpose. And out of focusing on what we call a sense of purpose, it engenders, it creates this thing, this something that feels different. And that thing is what I call confidence. And confidence comes from the degree of self-esteem, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about yourself, especially when you're out there training. Keep in mind, all fights are won and lost, not out in the ring. They're all won and lost in the gym. So this is where you do your homework. I want to show you how to prepare yourself and to do your homework correctly. Now, some of the things that I'm showing you will differ depending on your physical makeup, your physical attributes, your psychological nature. Keep in mind, we all have different styles. Different styles of boxing, different styles of kickboxing, different styles of what you may call street fighting. And style is determined by a number of factors. A tall person is going to have a little different style than a shorter person. Somebody who's got the physical attributes of being very quick will have a different style of fighting than someone's not so fast. So your physical attributes have a lot to do with dictating your style of fighting. Your psychological nature has a lot to do with your style of fighting. Some people are real trigger happy. They're dying to get in there and bite your ear off or bite your eyebrow and let your blood run in your face, squeeze your head off or what have you. Some people are more laid back to play a waiting game. So your psychological nature has a lot to do with your style of fighting. The point I'm trying to make here is don't let me dictate to you your style of fighting. I'm not asking you to emulate me in any way. Don't try to copy my physical aggressiveness, my power, my speed, or what have you. Pick up the elements which you see that I reflect in you. In other words, to the degree that you see the best of yourself in me, use that to your advantage. Also keep in mind, other things that are going to affect your style will be the kind of opponent in front of you. Like I was saying earlier, you're not going to fight a tall person the same way you would somebody shorter. You're not going to fight a big person the same way you would somebody small. The situation you're in also affects the style of fighting you have. If I'm fighting somebody out like in the ring that I'm in now, this is about a 17.5 foot, 18 foot ring, I'm going to fight them a lot differently than I would if I'm in a 12 foot square ring. If I'm out in a sandy beach and I'm slipping and sliding all over the place, my style of fighting is going to be different than it would be if I'm on a hardwood floor. So the situation you're in, the environment you're in, has a lot to do with determining the style of fighting that you have. Of course, another situation, another thing which affects your style is what we call your knowledge, and that's what I'm trying to give you today. So new knowledge to help you with your target practice. There's a couple rules that I use in the combat situation. Number one, you always want to neutralize your opponent, neutralize his position before you attack him. Another rule that I have for engaging in combat is never compromise your abilities by allowing your selective skills to be a liability. That means, let's say if you're a boxer or a kickboxer and you spend all your time, your whole life in a standing position, so you know how to punch from a standing position and you know how to kick from a standing position. First time you're in a realistic altercation, a big guy about 220, 30 pounds, he's mad at you, he blindsides you from the side, boom, he pops you. For the first few seconds, you're down on the ground. You don't know how to punch and kick from the ground. He's on top of you pounding away. For the first 5-10 seconds you're down there on the ground, you may be able to get back up, but those first few seconds you're going to feel a little helpless. In other words, what you've done is you've compromised. You've spent all your time learning how to punch and kick from a standing position. Now in your first realistic situation, you're on the ground. If you don't know anything about ground technique, you're kind of helpless. So those of you out there who are boxers, you want to learn some kicking skills, pay attention to some of the pad work that we're going to be doing today. I'm not trying to limit you to just saying we're just going to do boxing techniques, but I do believe this. A man who's got good hands will beat a man that's got good legs any day, hands down. So I want to concentrate quite a bit today on how to work your hands. The kicks will come later. The kicks will be a little bit secondary. I primarily use my kicks to set up a hand combination, or I use my kicks to finish my opponent off once I know he's hurt and he's ready to run home to mommy. A sixth factor that can determine your style of fighting, and what I'm talking about here are 5 or basically 6 determinants which affect your style. Could be the situation you're in. Sometimes you've got maybe a real good left hook. All of a sudden you get out there in a realistic altercation, somebody pops you on the side of your arm with a baseball bat. All of a sudden you can't punch with that arm. Now you're kind of helpless. How do you fight without your best weapon? There's an old saying in a fight game, of course, when you're fighting somebody that's physically stronger than you are, you're always beating with a superior weapon. And then, of course, the person who's got superior weapon, you're always beating with a superior tactic. So hopefully today I can show you some of these weapons, the way they're supposed to be executed. And then on the second tape, the second part of this series on target practice, I want to show you some tactics in which to enable you to defeat someone who has a superior weapon. Now, the first thing I want to do is let's get into showing you how to position yourself. That's very, very, very important. Then we're going to work a little bit on a jab with the lead hand and a jab with the lead leg. Keep in mind, the quality of your jab will determine the direction which that fight takes. Okay, now working with me here today are a couple of my partners. Jim West is over here. He's a trainer. Full contact trainer, karate trainer, kickboxing, boxing trainer up at the Fort Bragg, North Carolina area. And to my right is Jamie Wright. He trains here at the Wilmington Boxing Center. This is where we're shooting here today, Wilmington Boxing Center here in the state of North Carolina. This has been my home for the last 5 years. Some of you who are fortunate enough to work in a facility of this type, I want you to keep in mind that it's a better environment for you to train in if you can find this. I want to show you some of the gear that we have to work with. Number one, can you hand me that hand wrap there, Jim, real fast? I want to show you real fast how you can wrap your hands. It's not important that you wrap your hands if you've got a nice strong wrist like 8.5, 9-inch wrist. But it's good to protect these metacarpal bones on your hand here, and also this part of your wrist, right where the joint bends. Sometimes that gets defective, and it's a little hard working with a busted wrist. Now, you go and buy yourself some hand wraps. They're very inexpensive. To begin with, there's different ways of wrapping. You can follow directions that come with the hand wraps themselves. I start with the thumb. I'm primarily interested in my wrist, more so in these metacarpal bones. All right, now watch what I'm doing. Number one, I'm going to go around the wrist, protecting the wrist. Now, if I have a long wrap, which I don't have here, I'll wrap that wrist twice. All right, but since I've got a shorter wrap here, I'm only wrapping it once. I can go back in a second, add some tape to it. What I like to do is split my fingers. I go up this way, I turn the tape sideways, I split one finger, come back around the thumb, I go up again, I split the second set. And from here I come back to the back side. Now what I want to do is I want to tie the thumb in. This is when I'm punching underneath the person's elbow, I'm not going to jam my thumb back in the opposite direction. Now watch it, I go around the thumb. Now what I want to do is pull the thumb tight underneath my wrist here. As I go underneath the wrist, I come back around the top again. Now I'm going to split the other knuckle. I'm doing this kind of quickly because I want to get to the target practice. Go through the knuckle again. Back down around. Now I want to go up and support those metacarpal bones. Now if you can pull the camera in real tight, I want to try to show you something if I can on this first joint here. The name of the game is when I'm hitting something hard or solid like the top of an opponent's head, or if I'm throwing a punch in the midsection, he turns sideways and I hit his wrist bone, you've got tendons which run right across the top of this metacarpal bone, and it goes right over the top of the joint. Now if you can see this tendon here, watch what I'm doing. The tendon, I don't know if you can zero in it, but what I want to do is pull that tendon to the side. See the tendon go to the side? Now it's on top of the knuckle. Now it's to the side. What a lot of boxers do is when they hit, they split that tendon and they've got hand trouble for the rest of their life and they end up leaving the ring. So when you hit something, you must keep in mind you want to pull that tendon to the side so that it doesn't split when you're making contact. A lot of boxers are unaware of that phenomenon. We should learn that when I was hitting the Makiwara board or breaking boards in Okinawa with the knuckles. Now keep your hand straight like this. See the hand is straight. Keep the fingers spread out. Don't keep them tight like that when you're wrapping it because it'd be too tight once you get fully wrapped. The last time I'm going up around the metacarpals like so, wrapping it. Then I'm going to pull it back this direction, and then I want to lace the Velcro on as such. Now what I could do is hand me some tape there. I usually supplement this with some tape. I tape the wrist first. Now I got it. I like a couple wraps around the wrist. Then I go up crisscross in here. Keep the fingers separated, otherwise when you finish putting the tape on, you can't make a fist. Squeeze it tight before I make the finish. Wrap off, pop it, and I'm done. Thanks, Jim. Next thing you want to do is make sure you get yourself a good set of boxing gloves. I like to work with a 16-ounce glove. Doesn't matter about the brand. I like ones that don't lace up. This way I can put the glove on when I don't have somebody nearby to help me train. I can put the Velcro on, cover up the Velcro, so when I'm sparring, I can spar with the same gloves, and without this Velcro here being covered, you're going to get sliced up quite a bit. Next, hand me the 4-ounce gloves to the left of those. You can start off with these little gloves. I call them Jane Fonda gloves. These are little 4-ounce gloves. Now for some of you beginners, you can work with the double-end bag, speed bag, or heavy bag with these little light gloves. The reason I like using a heavier glove, the 14, 16-ounce gloves, is it builds up your deltoid muscles, it builds up your trapezes, and you get used to keeping your hands up. Keeping your hands up is very important for fighting. Next, hand me the headgear and the mouthpiece. For those of you who want to start getting into some kind of sparring or light sparring, you get yourself a good set of headgear. This was used in the last Olympics that were used in Korea. This gear comes from Germany. It's got air sacs in it. What I don't like about it, if you're sparring somebody that hits real hard, it doesn't protect your ear from a hook. Get yourself a good mouthpiece. Go to a dentist. It'll cost anywhere from $35 to $150 depending on the type of mouthpiece that the dentist fits with. Or you can get you some of this stuff and melt it at home. It'll cost about $3 or $4. Depends on your sparring partners how good a mouthpiece you want to work with. Next, I have a cup. The cup and the shin guards. Now with the cup, basically this is in case somebody fires a groin kick at you, or if you're lifting your leg, throw a high kick and they throw a low kick, it protects the groin area. Shin guards, this gear came out of LA. The best gear probably comes out of Paris, France, where you got some really good kickboxers. What I like about this shin gear is, if I can show you for a second down on my shin, it goes almost more than halfway around my shin. This way, if I get hit on the outside over here, it protects my as well as my fibular bone. Also gets back here these different nerves, like this peroneal nerve runs down the back side of your leg. It's not going to make you drop if somebody fires a real good leg kick at you. Next we have what we call Thai pads. This particular set comes from Thailand. We use this gear. Slide your arm up in here and grab it with the forearm. You can take punches on here. Of course, you work it in sets of twos. You work the powerful shin kicks, any kind of a kicking, punching combination. These are excellent tools. Also, you could crisscross them in front of your body, and a person could grab your head and work knee maneuvers against them. Outside of that, you get yourself a good set of tape. Anytime you got to tape the gear on or tape your hands up, it makes it a lot more successful for you. Now watch this. We're going to back up here for a second. My friend Jamie here to the right was a member of the team that went to the Junior Nationals 2 different times, so he's an excellent boxer, although he's just turned 18 years old, but he's got excellent hand speed and he's got nice straight punches. Now watch, everybody get in a fighting stance. And this is where the key begins. If you're not in a strong position, you can't execute well, you can't defend well, and you can't counter well. Now, in kickboxing, there's 2 different styles. Notice my weight is primarily on my front foot and I have my rear heel up. This is how some kickboxers fight. Sometimes they'll put the weight back on their rear foot and they'll sort of lift their front toe up this way. And this is to prevent someone from firing real fast leg kicks at my shin bone down here, breaking my leg. From here, I can lift my foot real fast, turn my hip, and block the leg kicks, or if somebody's trying to fire a fast obstruction or one of those oblique kicks, it gives me good defense. We're going to work primarily in a cross between a Thai boxing, Burmese boxing, kickboxing stance and in what we call a Western stance. Now, in some of the Eastern styles, watch my stance please, some of the Eastern styles of boxing, they keep their weight forward with the front foot sort of turn sideways. Can you see this stance? You see this a lot in a lot of the Shaolin boxing, the Wushu styles of fighting, the Wing Chun, even Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, they work this particular type of stance. I'm not fond of this type of stance because there's too much weight on the front leg. It makes it too easy for someone to kick this leg out from under me and break my leg. If I'm going for speed, a lot of boxers will do this. They'll keep their weight 50-50 on each leg. And sometimes if they're going for good penetration speed, when I say penetration speed, I'm referring to your ability to penetrate your opponent's defensive perimeter. They'll keep the weight sort of on the front foot. As you see my weight sort of on the front foot, it makes it easier for me to explode forward fast. In other words, it enhances my trigger squeeze. To me, the trigger squeeze is perhaps, in principle, the most important aspect of fighting. How explosive, how deceptive, how decisive is your trigger squeeze. Now, in Western boxing, you see most of the old manuals, they put most of the weight back on the rear foot. Now, I don't mean sit down on the rear leg like I'm doing now, but instead of a 50-50 weight distribution, all right, you shift maybe about 60%, 55-60% of your weight back to the rear foot. So you have less weight on the front foot than the rear leg. And the importance of this is, if I can back up just for a second, the importance of this is when I'm getting ready to penetrate, as I fire the jab, which will be with the front hand, of course, the jab, I just want to sort of find my range with the jab. I need some speed here. As I'm penetrating, I still keep the weight back on the rear leg. Reason for this is I want the power back here. So after I finish the jab, penetrate with jab, I can shift the weight and follow through the right hand. This is different than the Eastern style boxing. Eastern style boxing, which a lot of karate people use, they keep the weight forward, which you see now. I'm not fond of this stance here because once I have penetrated, watch it. Once I have penetrated, notice the weight is on my front foot. It's good for speed. My problem here is if I'm falling through the rear hand, now my right hand, I've got no weight behind the punch, therefore I've got no power there. Watch the weight shift. The weight's on the rear leg. See it shift to the front leg. Shifting back. Your power in your punches, keep this in mind, folks, the power in your punches comes from your legs. A lot of coaches teach you it comes from your shoulders, it comes from your arms. So they want you to build those arms up and get them real big. That's nonsense. You want thick shoulders, thick trapezius muscle, nice thick lean back, flat chest, lean, quick arms. Your power comes out of your ankles. That's why boxers wear high top boots. If you look at the boots that Jamie's wearing over here, the reason the boxers wear the high top boots is to support the ankle. It puts strength in the ankle. I'm wearing what we call a quarter top. You see a lot of wrestlers and weightlifters wearing this type of boot, or they wear the 3/4 top, which I think you got more of a 3/4 top, so of a wrestling shoe on. It doesn't matter. The main thing is you don't want something that's slippery on the bottom where you slip and slide all over the ring or something. Especially when you get out there and you start sweating, the ring gets wet, or you're hitting a heavy bag or something, the floor gets wet, and you start sliding. All right, now let's go back to the stance, gentlemen. We're going to work on the jab first. Remember it again, the quality of your jab determines the direction which that fight takes. I'm a firm believer in the jab is the most supreme weapon in all combat. Well, it's a street fight. There's nothing quicker than a fast little flick with your front hand to somebody's eyes. If you think you're a good karate man, you think you're a good kicker, you think you're a good kickboxer, you got a deadly kick, I don't care what kick you use, folks, that kick can be neutralized with a good fast jab. And any punch in boxing, I don't care if it's a straight right cross, a good uppercut, or a good hook, or a good jab. Any punch in boxing can be neutralized with a good jab. So keep this in mind. Anytime you're going up against an opponent, you, oh God, coach, he's got a good right hand, oh, he's got a deadly left hook. Neutralize it. How do I do that? With a jab. Keep that in mind. That's why I emphasize jab, jab, jab. Supreme punch in boxing. My point is you can't jab, you can't fight. It's that simple. All right, now watch the position. What we're going to work on today, I'm going to keep my weight a little bit back on the rear foot. Notice my toe on my front foot is pointed somewhat towards my opponent. Normally in boxing, when we jab, we want to point that toe straight towards the target. So in other words, I'm pointing that toe straight at my opponent's chin. But now watch, see the angle of my hip. In kickboxing, because when I jab this way, if my hip is pointed out this direction, if I start to kick behind the jab off this lead leg, I have to turn the hip first, which telegraphs my movement before I can execute the kick. So if I'm kickboxing, when I jab, I'll step in sideways. Notice that my foot is now pointed away from my opponent, but my hip is pointed straight towards my opponent. Therefore now, it's easier for me to throw a jab, follow through with a kick. So I would use that type of stance if I were following through with a kick. So I will switch sometimes from pointing the toe this way to turning the inboard a little bit. All right, gentlemen, let's position. Now please, let's not get into a wide stance. Does everybody see the stance of mine is real wide? Watch me turn a little bit sideways. I see this a lot in karate. What happens here when you start to penetrate from a wide stance, you have a tendency to drag the rear leg. It acts as an anchor. Notice that rear leg is hooked to my hip. For that reason, I can't torque. Face me here for a second, Jim. Watch the two of us. If I'm trying to penetrate Jim, I want to set him up with a jab, get his attention upstairs with a lead hand. Notice I'm dragging the rear foot. Notice his leg is hooked to his hip. For me to hit him with the right hand, I've got to turn the hip. That's as far as I can turn that hip because the rear leg is back too far. See, I'm out of range. Now watch the difference. If I step in, I watch my rear foot comes in behind it. See the rear foot's up where it's supposed to be? Now I can turn the hip, therefore reaching the target. So watch it, whether you shadow fighting, hitting a double end bag, focus pads, or heavy bag. Don't drag that rear leg. That's a real bad habit a lot of boxers have, and especially karate people. Now gentlemen, position again. Now from here, let's just warm the jab up. Every time you punch, I want you to attempt to step in behind the punch. Whether you're throwing a jab, or whether you're throwing the right cross, or an uppercut, or a hook. You want to get your body weight into it. In other words, this gives your technique substance. All right? Without substance, there can't be any authority on the end of your technique. There's no bite on the end of that technique. All right? You want to convince your opponent you're really coming with total conviction. To get that total conviction, we need substance. We need body weight behind it, And you need to convince your opponent that you're moving with conviction. That means put your emotions into the technique. All right, position. I'll explain that conviction factor a little later. All right, hands up, gentlemen. Okay, just step in with a jab. Just step in, jab, jab again, back reposition. Now the idea on this jab, keep this in mind. Watch our stance. When I begin the jab, I want my fist covering my target. No one's going to hit me on the shoulder. Therefore, I don't want the fist in front of the shoulder. This is where I'm vulnerable, so I want that fist in front of my face. Now, normally what I do is I teach my people, if you can't touch your eyebrows with your thumbs, your hands are too low. Your hands are too far from your head. Does everybody see this? All right. Now, keep in mind, the heel of the hand here, this part of your forearm, is the toughest part of your arm. So I want that part of my arm always facing away from me. Not this way, open. Not this way. So a lot of karate guys fighting this way, a lot of Thai boxers this way. I like the tough part. I can always open or I can always turn back this way. I want these forearms up and down. Now some of you guys are going to have a tendency to do this. Your elbows are going to go out, flare out a little bit. Watch that when you shadow fight in the mirror. I'm going to show you a little bit about shadow fighting now. When your elbow goes out, what happens to your hand? Notice when the elbow goes out, your hand has a tendency to come down. So watch that. Keep these hands vertical, gentlemen. All right, when you're jabbing, the fist comes off the jaw. You finish the punch, make sure it's out straight, and it comes right back to the jaw. Okay, let's work on straightening the punch and pulling it right back to the jaw. Ready? Jab, jab again, back reposition. All right, ready? Jab, jab again, back reposition. Try to keep that arm as loose as possible when you're jabbing. Don't get physical in a fight. Don't get physical when you're jabbing. Watch my hand. You want to keep your hand as loose as possible, almost like I'm fanning the top of his head. Okay? Watch my hand. It's like a fanning sensation. That's how loose I want there. In other words, instead of fanning his head with a fanning motion, I just turn it over into a punch. So I get the snapping, the snap effect. Please keep this in mind. When you fire a jab, and about 90% of the people who fight don't do this correctly. These are outside punches. Your jab and your right cross, they must be straightened when you punch. Now watch, your power in a punch is on that last 3 or 4 inches. From here to there. Reason for that is your tricep comes into play here. And you get the full extension of your ankle right on the end of that punch. Let me show you something, what I'm talking about. Face me like this, Jim. A little bit more this angle. Watch the angle here. I'm going to throw a punch, but with the arm completely straight. Now watch what I'm talking about. You're not punching with the arm. Notice my arm is completely straight. It's almost locked out. But from here, because I'm punching with the ankle, watch the leverage I get on the end of the punch. All right. And that's without any arm motion whatsoever. Ankles, ankles. Watch this. I'm over 200 pounds. I could bounce all day long on one ankle. You can't do that on your arms. So you want to get your legs into the punch as much as possible. Did you all see what I did there at the end of that punch? So now keep this in mind. 2 points on the jab. 2 points you must remember when you're throwing the right cross. Offensively, your power is on the end of that punch. Also, a lot of coaches teach that you can twist right on the end of that punch, you get that tearing sensation. Straighten that punch out. Why? For power. When I say straighten it out, I did not say lock it. When I said straighten out, I did not say reach, nor did I say hyperextend. Straighten it without locking it. Straighten it without locking. Defensively, keep that punch straight, because on the end of that punch, you want it straight because you don't want your opponent to get in on you. Face me in a fighting sense, Jim. Now watch this carefully. If I'm too close to my opponent, I have smothered my own punches. That means I don't have enough daylight, enough room in here to execute a punch. I need the daylight. I need the space in order to execute the punches. When you start throwing bent arm punches, watch my punches now. They're going to be bent arm. Watch them. I'll throw about half speed so you can see what I'm talking about. See the arms are bent right on the end of those punches? Right on the end of those punches, the arms are bent. A lot of karate styles teach that nonsense. What I'm doing is crouching. If I'm throwing bent arm punches, I'm allowing my opponent to come in on me, to get closer to me. So in effect, I'm smothering my own punches. So please, when you're shadow fighting, hitting heavy bag, hitting the focus pads, and especially when you're sparring. Don't give me any of this bent arm punch stuff. These punches must be straight. All right, position again. All right, gentlemen, let's concentrate on that now. A little faster on the punch. You're going to step in with a double jab this time. Keep in mind, each time you fire the punch, step in on it. Ready? Fire. 1, 2. Back, reposition. Elbow straight up and down. Concentrate on the forearm. Weight back in the rear leg. Ready? Fire. Now notice right at the end of that jab, I still have the majority of my weight back in the rear leg. So if I wanted to throw the right hand, see if I want to throw this right hand, see the weight's back here, I can shift that weight and I've got some power. All right, Jim, hand me the little circle there for a second. One thing you coaches could do with your students if you want to play with it. Face me, Jamie. Jamie has an excellent jab. So good he almost goes to sleep with it sometimes. Now watch, sometimes you get a little circle like this. Get you some little, it's not a hose or a little nylon or what is this called? Polyurethane or something. I put a coat hanger in here, it gives it its stiffness. In other words, just a little small hula hoop. It's about 12 inches in diameter. You hold it, fighting stance, turn a little bit more at this angle. You hold it roughly about 14 inches from your opponent. And you hold it here, you want to teach your student to punch through the loop without the forearm hitting it. Now watch my forearm. If the forearm swings out, see the elbow swing? If the elbow swings out like that, I'm going to pop that loop when I go through it. A lot of Western boxers do that. A lot of Eastern boxers do this. They work what we call a rising elbow. See the elbow comes straight up? See a rising? And therefore the forearm's going to hit the loop. The idea is when you fire a jab, you want it to come in as straight as possible. So just before contact, I want this elbow straight behind the fist, so I'm driving straight in. So it's almost in effect like my elbow comes up and it goes straight in like that. All right, let's try a couple, Jamie. All right, fire. Ah, try it again. Now real fast. Now take a half step back. All right, step through and jab, go. Step through and jab back. See why the elbow hit it when he came back that time? Watch. On the recoil, you don't want to pull your elbow back over here to the outside. There's nothing behind the elbow to protect. This is where he's trying to counter punch you or counter kick you. So when the elbow comes back, pull it right back to shield the ribs. Got me? So use this as an interesting tool. It's just a little gimmick, but the key is it teaches you to punch straight. Now watch this. Everybody position facing the camera. Defense. When you're playing football, you square your shoulders up against your opponent. Now when you box and you kickboxing, what we try to do is we try to pull this shoulder back as far as we can, so when I throw the right hand, I'm getting as much range on that punch as possible. Therefore, I got more leverage behind the punch. Also, when you're fighting, you always want to give your opponent as little a target as possible. Always deny him access to the target, just like in basketball. Deny him access to that basket position. All right, work that alignment a little bit. Give him as little a target as possible. I don't mean get down like this, but give him as little a target as possible. Now watch, when I throw this jab, we do this in kickboxing. Watch my chin posture, please. Instead of putting the chin down like Western boxers do, we're taught to pull the chin straight back in. What this does is turn sideways, Jimmy. Turn face the other way. Notice when a person stands, the back of the neck comes here and then the head curves out. When you have that curvature of the spine here, it's easy to knock somebody out. But when you pull the chin straight back in, pull the chin, see it straightens this angle up. And it makes it harder to knock someone out. Reason is when you get hit here, and this part of the neck is where you feel the leverage. The next morning when you get popped here, you're going to feel sore here. 2 days later, you're going to be sore and swollen up the forehead. So you want this part of your neck to be really strong. You've got all these nerves back here. Your peroneal nerve runs up and down the side of the neck. All your facial nerves come off of here. Okay, your vagus nerve or whatever. So this whole area here is full of nerves. So you need to support it as much as you can. All right, position. So when I'm doing kickboxing, what I'll do is I'll shrug my shoulders a little bit, pull the chin in. This makes it harder for my opponent to get inside and trap me, boom, and come across with an elbow technique and slice me with an elbow. So I do that a little bit in Western boxes. All right, position. Now watch, when I extend the jab out, gentlemen, try to do this with me. Extend your jab out. See this shoulder? I don't want any daylight between my shoulder and my jawbone. So as soon as I finish that jab, see I'm not open in there. It's hard if you get me with a counter right hand or a counter hook kick. Back reposition. Turn and face me on this angle. This angle here. All right, step in and extend your jab out straight. Now watch. At the end of your punch, I don't care who you are, how fast you punch, or how fast you kick. At the end, every kick and every punch, there's a little gap. I'm not talking about gap in space, I'm talking about gap in time, where there's nothing happening. So in other words, he's just making contact. Now pull your fist back no more than 4 inches. Pull back 4 inches. Stop. Now I'm not talking about this gap in space. I'm talking about the amount of time it took him from when he finished the punch to he got the punch back to this point. Notice when he's pulling his punch back, stick it out straight again. Watch what happens to his elbow when he pulls the punch back. Pull it back 4 inches. See the elbow drop? All you got to do is slip to the side. See that gap? Boom! Right through there with the right hand. Or slip, pull it back, right through here, boom! Right through there with a hook heel kick. So I don't want that gap in between the shoulder and the chin, because you're going to get popped with a counter right hand or a counter hook kick. So in other words, when I'm jabbing, watch my shoulder. It comes up and actually touches my chin as I'm firing it. Got me, gentlemen? Let's try that. Let's position. So there's a lot to a jab here. It's not just sticking a hand out. We've got to be relaxed. Got to have a good defensive posture. We've got to watch the weight. We've got to be offensively correct, defensively correct. Okay, position. All right, step out, fire. Double fire. Back reposition. Let's try again now. Fire. Double fire. Got the idea? Okay. Now, last point. Face me. Fighting stance. Purpose of a jab. Remember at the beginning of the tape, I talk about sense of purpose. Without a sense of purpose, you can't have confidence. And I don't care how good your skills are, folks. Without confidence, your skills will not work. Got to have the confidence. And that comes from going to the gym, doing your homework. It has to come from in here, not from a book. All right, now watch. When you jab, I want to express to my opponent my intentions. Yes, I want a correctly executed punch, whatever punch I'm firing. But I want to make sure each punch has what we call a language. Not just a body weight behind it, but an emotional language. And that is called your intent. What is your intent when you squeeze the trigger? I could come out against my opponent. First thing I want to let him know is, hey, I can hit you. Boom! Second thing I want to let him know, hey, I'm quicker than you. Pow! Second thing I can let him, next thing I can let him know what that jab is, hey, not only can I hit you, I can make it sting a little bit. Boom! Not only can I make it sting or burn a little bit, I can back you up with, bam! Back him up. Talk to him. That's called language. Express your intent with conviction. Okay? Don't think about it and then you squeeze the trigger. You leave your thoughts in your back pocket. Let your thoughts, let your intentions participate in the execution. Does that make sense? Okay? So, you may have good technique, but can you enforce the execution? It's like principles of fighting are fine, but if they can't be enforced, what good are they? Now watch. Position again. Now, next time I throw the punch, not only can I back you up, but I can sit you down. Sit him down with the next one. Then the next time you fire a punch, talk to him. Express your intent. Express it with conviction. What I'm talking about here is when you squeeze that trigger, step in there like you mean it. Mean it from your heart. Mean it from here. Throw it all in there. So the next time I step in there, let it know, hey sucker, I can bury you. Got me? That's what I mean by moving with substance. So that when your opponent stands on the end of those punches and kicks, he sees not speed, not power. There's all kinds of guys out there with speed and power. They're a dime a dozen. But I'm talking about somebody who moves with his heart. There's few and far between. A lot of boxers talk about double hard. Double hard means they hit hard, and they got a hard chin. Okay? But they also talk about they want to check, see how hard you are in here. So they walk up to you and they say, I'm going to check you out here, and then I'm going to check you out in here. All right, very few people got it both places. Keep that in mind. Move with conviction. Develop your heart. Okay, position, gentlemen. Now let's just step in there, a single jab, a couple of double jabs. I want you to focus on speed. I want you to focus on power. I want you to think about one thing. Mean it, mean it, mean it. Talk to him. Each time you squeeze that trigger, think, I'm going to burn him. I'm going to collapse his defense. I'm going to penetrate. Okay? And then I'll show you a couple more things you can do with the jab. Okay, let's try a few of them. Ready? Okay, go with your own. Go for it. Okay, got the idea? So put that into your training. Now keep this in mind, face me. The jab with the punch, jab with the kick, it's got many purposes. I'm spending a lot of time on this jab, yes, because most people think they know how to fight, can't jab. All right, and those who want to get into the fight game, please work on it. Supreme technique going. Now watch. I can use my jab, and most people use it primarily as a sufficient lead-off technique. It's what we call an educated jab. Okay? An educated jab, it has speed, has power, but it also has purpose. I can use the jab to measure my opponent. Watch. I can use the jab to find my range. So in other words, if I can hit him here with a jab, I can hit him there with the right hand. If I can hit him there with a jab, yes, I should be able to tap him with a kick. So I use it as a range finder. I can also use the jab to collapse his defense. Make him think downstairs, boom, hit him with something upstairs. I can also use the jab to help me get set, get position, boom, to come through the home run shot, whatever it may be. I can also use the jab to make him blink, close his eyes, back him up, rock him off balance. Some people think they're good enough to use the jab to hit the top of the head, lift the chin up, and fire the right hand to the chin. Some people think they're so good with the jab, they can hit the side of the face, twist his head sideways, step in and hook him. I know coaches that teach that nonsense. And I see world champion boxers get out there, and they're lucky if they can land 3 out of 10 jabs. Now, I don't know if you're good enough to drop the chin, turn the head, lift the head. All right, but there's one thing you can do. Put some fireworks on the end of that technique. And every time it starts getting sloppy, think about putting your teeth into that technique as best you can. Now let's jump from the jab, gentlemen. Let's jump over to the right hand a little bit. My position. All right, slow motion. I'm going to say jab. We're going to step in with the jab, keeping the weight back in the rear leg. Then when I say right hand, shift the weight forward a little bit and sit down that right hand a little bit. Back reposition. Let's try it now. Step in jab, shift the weight, throw the right hand straight up, back reposition. Now when you shadow fight, some people crisscross the punches like this, okay? And what that does, doesn't build up bad habits. It teaches you to torque the hip into the punch a little more. Because a lot of people, when they punch it, see they punch with the arm and the shoulder. You want to learn to punch with that hip. Now watch this motion on the right hand, please. You start with the weight back on the rear foot. All right, gentlemen, just turn that direction and do this with me. Put your weight back on the rear foot. All right, shift the weight forward. Shift the weight back. The faster you shift that weight, folks, the more power you've got, the more momentum you create for that punch. Use the hips for transferring that power up through the kick or up and out through the punch. Now watch. I jab, the weight's on the rear leg. I shift the weight forward. The hips start the torque. Watch it again. Shift the weight. Hips start the torque. See this hip? As I turn the hip, the shoulder goes with it. Wherever the shoulder goes, boom, the hand ends up. Snap the punch on the end of it. All right, let's try it once. Slow motion. Jab, shift the weight, torque and snap. Back reposition. Again, when you finish the right hand, make sure that shoulder is touching your chin. Protect your chin there against a hook. Each time you throw a punch, each punch has its own built-in defense. Watch. The jab, see the fist straight in front of my face? Don't look over it. That's my built-in defense. See the right hand? Don't look over it. See that straight in front of my face? That's my built-in defense. When I throw a hook, same thing. Boom! Pull the shoulder back in front of my face. That protects me from the uppercut and the overhand right hand. When I throw an uppercut, boom! See the fist stop straight in front of my face? Just like when we kick. Fold the knee in front of the midsection before you execute. So all the offensive techniques have a kind of built-in defense. Let's try that combination a couple times. Jump position. Step in left, right. Now ready? Fire. 1, 2. Feel the weight shift. All right, don't drag your rear leg. Ready? 1, 2. Back. Again. 1, 2. Feel the weight shift. Double up on the jab. Follow through the right hand. Ready? Fire. 1, 2. Shift. Try it again. Double up. Shift. Boom. Straighten those punches out. Again. Ready? Fire. Make sure you straighten those punches out. Ready? Fire. Elbows in. Elbows in. Keep going. I'll hold up. You guys with those big arms and big puffy chest, on my weightlifting tape, you got to be aware of this. Take your thumb, you can't touch your shoulder, you got a problem. Your bicep's too big for fighting. See, if I can't pull the arm all the way up here so that the hand protects my jaw, then I got to lift the hand up, but that leaves my rib cage open. All right, so we don't want this big gap in here. If I have to fight like this because my arm's too big, I'm open for a hook heel kick or a left hook. Okay, if your chest is too puffy, so I see good boxers got a nice lean flat chest all the way up and down, so they can cross their elbows in front of the body if they have to. If your chest is too big, too puffy, all right, with the pectoral muscle, it sticks your elbow out. See the problem here? Your ribs are open. Okay, so you got to watch that. Keep those hands straight up and down when you're shadow fighting. Okay, let's go to the hook, gentlemen. All right, watch these combinations. So when we go to hitting the focus pads, you're doing them correctly. We don't have to go back and recapitulate anything. All right, the hook. This is my favorite punch because I batted left-handed all my life. I just have a natural left hip torque. Some people, it's a very difficult movement, especially guys with long arms. They don't seem to make good hookers. All right, position. Now, I want to work the hook off the jab, just to kind of break the basics down. Real fast, watch what I'm doing. After we step in the jab, notice the weight's back on the rear leg. I shift the weight forward. Now the weight's forward. I'm going to show you a speed hook and what I call a power hook. Of course, different places around the United States, they teach you hook different ways. From here, we just torque. Wherever you turn that hip, the shoulders go with it. All right, now watch this motion, please. When I jab, notice the weight's on the rear leg. I shift the weight forward. Why do I shift it forward? Because I want the weight up the front hand, because that's the hand I'm hooking with. When you hook, what I call a speed hook, we turn the hip. Watch this. See, I turn the hip, but the foot does not pivot. When I throw a power hook, as I turn the hip, I'll sit down on the rear toe, on the rear heel. Notice my rear heel is up. Watch it. I jab, shift the weight. Notice the heel is up. Now a power hook, I'll pivot on the front, boom, sit back down on the rear heel. That's when I know he's hurt. I don't have to double up and follow back through the right hand. I want to send him home to mommy kind of early. So some schools will say hook without pivoting. Some will teach you the full pivot. Some will teach step out, drag the foot across your hook. Some will teach step out with this way and then drag the foot. So there's about 4 or 5 different ways of actually executing hook. However, you move your feet. It's up to you and your particular coach, your particular school. But the hand has to be moved as such. Now let's work on the hand movement once, folks. Let's pay close attention to this. From the hip up, put your weight forward on the front leg. All I want you to do is just turn the hip and see what the rest of the body does. Turn the hip. Notice the shoulders come with the hand. Now turn the hip in and out fast, without pivoting, in and out fast. All right, basically that's it for a hook. Now the hand, sometimes you're going to drop down and come across. Sometimes you're going to dip the knee, slant the shoulders a little bit to come across. But basically, a hook comes off the chin. That means it doesn't go out, it doesn't come down. It comes straight from the chin, straight over to here, then straight back to here. Does that make sense? So watch, straight line from here to here. Put your hand up here. Pull that forearm straight across the front of your face. Make sure it's covering your face. Now leave it there. Now pull your hand right back to your right shoulder. Pull it on back to the shoulder. So it goes all the way across. Okay? Now, position, hand up. Take your right hand, put it right in front of your shoulder, just like this. You're going to pull that hook all the way back and hit that fist way back over here. Pull it back over here, Jamie, right here. All right? So in other words, when I'm hitting this hand over here with my left hand, what do I happen? Watch what happens to my defensive posture. Boom! See that shoulder straight in front of my chin? You can't come underneath here and hit me with an uppercut. Nor can you come across the top of my shoulder and hit me with a right cross. If I'm hooking like this, see the forearm on an angle, that's a no-no. See, it's too easy to come across the top and nail me. It's too easy to come underneath with an uppercut. Sometimes people stop it here. See, it's too easy for an uppercut. Thai boxers, a lot of them hook this way. They stop the fist straight in front of the face this way. They say so you can see. Alrighty, position. Okay, hold the right hand back here. Turn the hip and just see what happens to the fist. Ready? Turn it. Boom. Snap it in and back. Ready? Snap it in and back. Just turn the hip. Please, please, when you're shadow fighting, hitting heavy back focus pads, don't do this with the arm. Let the arm move independently of the shoulder. Lock it. It moves as a unit. Is that clear to everybody? And then after you lock it, you can move it independently or as a unit. Relax it so you're not locked, and just let it turn. So the body, the legs are doing all the work. Your arms are not working for you. In other words, don't get physical when you're fighting. Okay, that means don't put any effort into what you're doing. Okay, in terms of physical effort. Position again. Hold the right hand back. Shift the weight forward. Okay, now as you hook, shift the weight back a little bit. If I shift 20% of weight, that's going to be a little faster hook than if I shift 40% of weight. Is that clear to everybody? The more weight you shift, the slower the hook. The more weight you shift, the more power you got. So you make a trade-off. Do I need speed? Do I need power? Am I double hooking, single hooking, or triple hooking? Early in the fight, I'll go for speed. When he starts getting tired and starts getting sloppy, I'll drop down and go for power. All right, position. All right, ready? Hook, boom. All right, hook, boom. All right, hook, boom. Now this, I want you to back it up. I want you to step in, jab, shift weight, and then just hook back like that with your hand. Ready? All right, jab, shift weight, hook back like that. Do it a couple times. That's it. Go ahead. No, don't get the stance too wide now. Watch it. Keep going. Good. Looking good. Looking good. Good. All right. When you recoil the hook, now watch this, gentlemen. When you recoil that hook, pull it right back to here. Don't pull it back to the shoulder. Okay. Don't drop the hook after you finish it. Okay. Keep going. Good. Keep going. Keep in mind, this is a very difficult technique to learn. The hook is probably the most difficult technique to learn in the fight game. I find these punches I'm showing you, the jab, the right cross, and the hook, are far more difficult than the techniques we learn in kickboxing and the techniques that we learn especially in karate. The karate punches are real easy to learn, but unfortunately they're very unrealistic. Look at them. When you throw a punch from here, out, and back, what am I protecting? My hip? Who's going to hit you on the hip? When you finish your punch, look, everything that's important is wide open. Okay? So when you throw a punch, I don't care if it's karate, kickboxing, shield your body after you fire. Okay? All right, gentlemen, position again. And we're just going to concentrate on those three punches. Now, listen up. There are three words I like to use in a fight game. Fire, cover, maneuver. Fire, cover, maneuver. Watch it simply. Step in fire, cover, and then you maneuver. There's one of three things you can maneuver. You can maneuver your target, like my head will slip side to side. I turn my body in this way if he's throwing a kick or a knee at me. That's one thing I can maneuver. Let's try that once. Position. Step in fire, cover. Now slip head side to side. Basically what I'm doing here is face me, Jamie. If he steps in, fires a left, right at me. 1, 2, and then I come back with a counter left, he's going to slip to that side. Then I throw the right hand, he's going to slip to the head, and he come back with a hook punch. See the purpose of slipping the head side to side. Do this when you're shadow fighting. Do this when you work focus pads, and you also, it's very important that you do it when you're hitting heavy bag. All right, let's try the next step. Fire, cover. Now this time, roll with the hips. Roll, roll. You're catching a body punch, or you're catching a knee, or you catch one of those tie kicks in the midsection. Okay, back reposition. Face me, in other words, watch. Jim steps in, he throws a left, right, boom. From here, I'm coming back with a tie kick to the midsection. Watch him roll the forearm in and dip down with a knee. Boom. Back the opposite side, boom. So you roll those hips in to catch it. Could also be blocking body punches. Back reposition. Fire, cover, maneuver again. This time, step in fire, cover. Now you can maneuver by moving your position. What we call breaking ground. Take your rear foot and slide it over this way. It's called a little slide step. Back reposition. Take your rear foot and slide over this direction. Back reposition. So my rear foot's back at 6 o'clock. I can move it to 4 o'clock, or I can move it back over to 8 o'clock. Back reposition. Fire, cover, maneuver. This time, fire, cover, and maneuver by utilizing what we call a slide step. Ready? Fire, cover, maneuver. Back reposition. Okay. A third thing you can maneuver is, after you fire and cover, you can maneuver by bumping your opponent, spinning your opponent. You can maneuver by moving him. Now these are the basic drills. The next phase we're going to be going into, we'll take these basic drills, show you how to work them up here with focus pads, and from there we're going to go up against a heavy bag, learning to develop your balance, your speed, your timing, your range, and a sense of rhythm, leading up to this ultimate thing I call sense of purpose. Feeling, developing that something that we call confidence. All right, stay with us.